guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow, and I am back with an all-new video. Today's topic is a super wild, behind-the-veil energy read into the Appalachian Mountains. And if you have spent any amount of time there, you may be used to the eerie energy. Perhaps you haven't spent any time there, but you've heard some wild stories and what may appear to be some tall tales about paranormal experiences that have occurred there. Well, in this video, we're going to be exploring not just the three-dimensional information about it, but what specifically is going on behind the veil. Now, this is exactly the kind of content that I first started my YouTube channel with the intention of exploring. It's literally peeling back the three-dimensional veil and exploring the world around us. You are not going to want to miss this one. Now, before we get into the energy reading portion, we are, as always, going to start by exploring some three-dimensional information into the Appalachian Mountains, specifically looking into the location and what are some of the paranormal events that have been recorded as occurring there. So here we go. The Appalachian Mountains, often called the Appalachians, are a mountain range in eastern and northeastern North America. The Appalachians run from the island of Newfoundland in Canada southwestward to central Alabama. It covers 1,500 miles in total. That is an enormous amount. Now, interestingly enough, the range is older than any other major mountain range in North America, with the geological process of the mountains forming, according to the Wikipedia page, starting 1.1 billion years ago. Now, the Appalachian Mountains are known for weird events and legends, including reports of Bigfoot sightings, the supposed Mothman, which is a bat-like winged man, and something called a Grafton monster, which is a massive creature with short fur and broad-like shoulders. Now, there have also been sightings of strange lights and orbs, as well as strange noises, and even reports of feeling sick and or paranoid in the mountain range, which has been said to be linked to infrasound. Now, when I had seen infrasound, this is something I had never in fact seen before. So I Googled what infrasound is. It is said to be a low frequency that can affect the human body. Now, what causes infrasound? It is created by a combination of both naturally occurring geological aspects as well as industrial, such as wind blowing over the mountains or atmospheric pressure. Now, keep this specifically, this concept of infrasound in mind as we get into the energy reading portion, because this is absolutely going to play a part of it. Energy reading into the Appalachian Mountains. Now, the mountains contain both portals as well as energetic convergence points and ley lines, which is why the energy there is as it is and is both incredibly potent and eerie. So portals are something that naturally occur in areas that are mostly untouched by man and not in highly industrialized areas. Think of it almost like the natural element stands as a battery pack that enables the portal to work as it does. So portals are in fact real. They're not just something that has been spoken about in science fiction. Now, in addition to portals, which is like there's one door on one part of the universe and another door on another part and things can cross through, there is also ley lines and energetic convergence points. Now, ley lines are kind of like bands of energy that flow underground. So think about it if you've ever been in a large metropolitan city, such as perhaps London or even New York, and you have been in the subway system. So take the idea of there being tunnels that exist underground, but instead we're going to say it's not a subway tunnel and it's not trains that are passing through it. It's instead bands of energy. And the bands of energy that run underground absolutely can influence what is occurring above ground. Because we're going to take a country like the United States of America, where I live, but you can certainly apply this to any country around the globe. Here in the United States, you can have cities that are incredibly diverse, such as New York City, Los Angeles, Houston, Seattle. They're all incredibly different. And part of the reason they are all incredibly different is because of the influence of the ley lines. Because yes, absolutely, what is going on below ground energetically can influence what we see above ground. Now, I'm going to give you another three-dimensional example of this. So there is a highly seismic and active region in the United States. It's not strictly in the United States, it's also in the Pacific Ocean, which is called the Ring of Fire. Now, the Ring of Fire refers to the Pacific Belt, which again is a highly seismic region. This is a region that comprises 75% of all of Earth's volcanoes and 90% of all of Earth's earthquakes. Now, what we would see above ground is a mountain range, for example, where we have the fault lines here in California. We're only seeing what is above ground. But what is actually going underground is what's influencing what is going on above ground. So there's a highly seismic region. Why is it so seismic? Why is there so much volcanic and earthquake activity in this region? Because of the ley lines. So the ley lines that are happening underground can comprise the energy that you would, for example, experience in a city, but it can also influence geological events that happen on Earth as well. So that's ley lines. Now, I'm going to continue to work off of this idea and example of a subway system. So perhaps you yourself, if you've ever visited a city like New York, some train stops are relatively calm and quiet. And some, for example, like Times Square or 34th Street, are incredibly busy. So we're going to take an incredibly busy train station or train stop like Times Square, and we're going to compare that to an energetic convergence point. Because energetic convergence points would be a location where there's a number of different ley lines that are meeting there. Just like you could have a very busy train station where there's a number of different trains that you can get off and transfer to another one. And the more busy a train station is, as in the more stops there are and trains that can stop there, the more passengers are passing through. But in this case, again, it's not a literal train station, it's an energetic convergence point. So what's passing through? Not people, entities. Now, I'm also going to show you, because I know that you guys, especially if you've been here for a while, you like my drawings. I don't understand why, it beats the heck out of me, but I aim to please. So here we go. Now, I'm going to show you the way an energetic convergence point was shown to me. So it resembles roughly the shape of a stop sign. Now, it doesn't literally have directional points like I have drawn here. This is just for demonstrative purposes. So I have labeled north, south, east, and west. So the way that an energetic convergence point works is it's kind of like a hallway like this. But here's the thing about an energetic convergence point. If one were to walk through one door, they cannot, for example, walk out of the north door, hang a right or a left, and then walk through the east or the west door. That's not the way it works. They can only cross directly through. So I'm going to show you the way that it in fact works. It is, again, only with a straight line. So what that means is north and south can cross out of their door. East and west can cross out the respective opposing door. And then these doors on the side can also walk in a straight line and they can cross out of the opposing opposite door. This is the way an energetic convergence point works. You can only walk in a straight line and cross from the direct opposing door. So I want you to imagine that when an entity or a being walks through an energetic convergence point, what they're not actually seeing is the shape of the convergence point. They're seeing like a hallway, a straight hallway. There's a door here, there's a door here. So they can only cross straight through because they're not seeing the other shape that is available to them. Because these doors are a vibrational location. So it's a complementary and similar vibration that can be unlocked. And in this case, it just happens to be the direct opposing door. So that's an energetic convergence point. So the region in the Appalachian Mountains has strong energetic convergence points because of the influence of the ley lines as well as portals. So can you now imagine then if there's naturally occurring portals that exist there and energetic convergence points that are there, imagine all of the different entities that have been able to cross through and the influence energetically of those entities as well as the ley lines, because that is what is comprising the Appalachian Mountains. So as we know, if you've been here for a while, and if it's your first video with me, you now will know, natural areas that have mostly been untouched by man or industrialization may be locations where there are naturally occurring portals. And that is specifically the case of what is going on here in the Appalachian Mountains. Now, all of the naturally occurring portals on Earth have temporarily been closed. If this is the first you're hearing about it, you can let me know down in the comments and I will explain to you why, but they have temporarily been closed. However, prior to them temporarily being closed, they were open for a hella long time. And in that hella long time that they were open, there were a lot of different entities and their energies that were able to cross through. Now, energetic convergence points are areas with an enormous amount of energy where the ley lines are meeting. And thus, then, therefore, there is the presence of multiple doors that can be opened with various different things that are crossing through. So look at the Appalachian Mountains then, if you will, as a hot box. It's a hot box location of paranormal entities crossing through and the various different energies. So that's, for example, why people that are in that region will say they have heard things that have made their skin crawl, or they have perhaps heard sounds like a baby crying, or what sounds like there's whispers of voices in the trees, or even what appears to be the sound of someone calling the person's name. This is all par for course with this area because the energy of the entities in that area that have come through are of the eerie kind. So if you, for example, are somebody that has spent any amount of time there, as I know some of you have, and I have heard from you, do not feel comfortable going out at night in that area, there is a good reason why. Again, it's first and foremost, you're going to be experiencing the energy of the ley lines, plus the energy of that region has been altered by the entities that have crossed through. Now, the entities that have crossed through are not a direct vibrational match for us. So when they cross through, they're not in their preferred domain, and then therefore the energy here on Earth is not one that they themselves are used to. So what's been shown to me previously in the past when I've looked into regions like the Pacific Northwest, where there are a great number of naturally existing portals, which is also why there have been a number of Bigfoot sightings there, that's going to explain why Bigfoot has not really been seen all that much. Because the energy here on Earth is not that complementary to where they came from. So they don't really want to spend a lot of time out during the day when the energy here is the highest and it's already not a direct vibrational match. So it's the same thing in a case like this. The entities that are crossing through, they don't really want to come out during the day because the energy is too high for them. They then therefore are mostly going to be coming out at night. So look at it this way. They have already influenced the energy of the region by them crossing through and being there. They also then therefore are influencing the energy that people that live there are going to experience when they're in that range. So it's already going to be an energy that might creep people out. So the night is kind of like their time. It's like they own the night. So if a person was out at night, the entities that are there, their first course of action is not necessarily going to be violence. They're not going to run up to you, knock you down, stamp all over you, and unalive you. So their first course of action to own the night, one could say, would be to seriously spook a person and make the person go indoors. Because quite frankly, just like we might not want to encounter them in real life, they actually don't want to encounter us either. That's why they're going to create different diversions that could seriously spook a person out. But this is not quite like spooking a person out like if you go watch a horror movie, because at the end of the movie you leave, you go home and you know it's not real. In this case, the entities are in fact very real, and the energetic influence of them is very real as well. So this is first and foremost going to explain why if somebody has been there or has lived there, they might have experienced these weird kind of energies and why they might not feel comfortable going out at night. It is very much by design on the part of the entities that have crossed through. Now, interestingly enough, because as I had discussed at the top of the video, the Appalachian Mountains cover an enormous part of the eastern and the northeastern part of North America. One such state that is actually part of the Appalachian Mountain region is Tennessee. Now, the reason I'm specifically calling out Tennessee is because as I was looking into the energy of the Appalachian Mountains as a whole, something quite interesting was shown to me there, specifically as happening in a very rural part of Tennessee. This is a region where there is just a lot of woods. And what was shown to me, the United States government has a secret lab and facility in the forest, somewhere in the forest in Tennessee, where they are running secret experiments. And what kind of secret experiments? Well, this is where they are splicing together human DNA along with the DNA of a great number of other things, such as, for example, splicing together human and reptilian DNA, human and gray alien DNA, human, no, I don't know what this is called. There's also aliens that, extraterrestrials, let's call them that their head in the front would look like a normal human face. However, the back of their head from this region kind of extends back, and it's kind of like the shape of a watermelon. So imagine like a watermelon under a person's skull that is an elongated shape here. Now, if you looked at them from the front, it just might look like there's a protrusion in the back of the head. You actually would not be able to see the entirety of what the shape of the head is unless they were turned to the profile, because then you would see that the head actually expands quite far back in this direction. Now, I don't know what these are called, but I have seen them on more than one occasion. Now, they've also been attempting to splice human DNA along with this watermelon head extraterrestrial. Now, they have also been splicing together human DNA along with spider DNA to literally create a Spider-Man, as well as human DNA and bat DNA to create Batman, as well as splicing together human DNA and vampire DNA, because yes, vampires are real, and not just the elite kind, if you know, you know. And like a scene out of Jurassic Park movies, what they are also doing there is they have extracted dinosaur DNA from fossils, and they have mixed the fossilized dinosaur DNA with human DNA. So yes, now perhaps hearing this, you can understand why this is a secret government lab that is not for our eyes. Now, the woods in and around this entire region are enclosed with massive gates. However, these are not 3D physical barriers. They are energetic barriers. So I first and foremost was shown this when I had channeled the information, and then when I had done the three-dimensional, when I had looked into the Wikipedia page and I had read about infrasound, that actually explained what was the vibrational gates that had been shown to me. That's also why at the top of the video I had said, keep this in mind for the energy reading portion. Because what some of the people may have in fact been experiencing when they have been hiking around the region, they might have in fact gotten a little bit too close to one of the secret government labs that are there, because they are sprinkled around that region. And thus, then, therefore, they were exposed to the vibration of the gates that were meant to keep them out. Because this secret lab is not meant for us to see, and it is not meant for us to know about. So if anyone has ever felt sick or even paranoid when they have been in the Appalachian Mountain range, it is perhaps because they have gotten just a touch too close to these vibrational gates. However, the vibrational gates are not just meant to keep us out, they are also designed to keep these different hybrids in. Because just like they don't want us to see them, they don't want these creatures to get out and be seen. But they're also, the purpose of them splicing the human DNA along with the other various animal DNA was so that they could observe them. So if these creatures got out, they wouldn't be able to observe them. So these vibrational gates were designed, yes, both to keep us out, but also to keep them in, because the United States government has spent a small fortune on, first and foremost, designing the labs, keeping the labs operational and up and running, and then also the financial resources that went into the actual splicing and creation of these hybrids. So just like we might feel nauseous or sick or paranoid if we got too close to the gates, a similar physical reaction would happen to the hybrids, and that's in fact what is keeping them in. Now, what was also shown to me is there's an enormous amount of cameras in this enclosed by the vibrational gate. There's an enormous amount of cameras that are enclosed in this area. Some of them are high up in trees, some of them are down on the ground, some of them are mounted on power lines, some of them are even designed to be hidden, so they're not easily detectable, and you will find out why momentarily. Now, there's more than one lab sprinkled throughout the region, and irrespective of what the labs are working on and what human and animal DNA they may be splicing, they all share some common physical characteristics. Namely, the back of the building resembles a loading dock. So the back of all of these buildings resemble some sort of a loading bay. It's a wide open space, and there's various different doors. And these doors correspond to the kind of animal-human hybrid that part of the facility has been working on. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you yourself might have like a back door in your own home. You have a door and then you have a screen door. So for example, at the end of the day, you might close the door itself and lock the door, but maybe during the day, especially if you're in the room right next to it, you might keep the door itself open and only keep the screen door that's closed. So kind of imagine the back of the building has various different doors like this with various different screen doors. So if, for example, one of the hybrids was out and about during the day, it can still come back and it can be let into the building. Because this is in fact what was shown to me. Because while the hybrids mostly physically resemble a half man, half animal, many of them are actually rather primitive, and they prefer to come back at the end of the day and to sleep indoors in what would resemble a rather large cage. So they have time they can go out, because again, the purpose of them being created was to observe them out in the wild, but they're primitive and they could be attached to their caregivers. They'll come back at the end of the day. So the back door to the building, similar to like a screen door that's left open, they can come back at any given time and they can go back into their cage, they can rest, they can nap, they can kind of come and go as they please. However, again, I'm going to remind you, they do mostly resemble humans, but they're also very identifiable as some sort of a hybrid. So for example, the half man, half dinosaur will have a mostly human face. However, the eyes are not human eyes. And it has scales on the forehead. It has a hard and large exoskeleton on its spine. It has scales on the arms and the abdomen. However, the rest of it appears to be primarily human, all except for the tongue, because it does not have a human tongue and therefore it cannot speak. And what was shown to me is that it is quite primitive because speech is actually connected to higher cognitive function. And without the ability to speak, the cognitive function on the dinosaur human reptilians is quite low. Now, these dinosaur human hybrids are not violent, nor are they dangerous, and they are very attached to their caregivers. So while they may choose to go out during the day, essentially take themselves for a walk, they do come back to the building at night and they sleep in large cages. However, not all of the hybrids are gentle, and some are downright cunning and evil. And there is a hierarchy among the different hybrids that have been created. However, unlike Jurassic Park, the dinosaur hybrids are not, in fact, the most fierce nor dangerous. However, the Spider-Man is. And the Spider-Man that has been created is not at all cute, like whatever actor has played Spider-Man in any of the previous iterations of the Spider-Man movie. Now, the Spider-Man do in fact make very, very large webs. They can climb very, very high heights, which is why a lot of the cameras in this region have actually been concealed. Because in the past, when they have had very obvious and notable cameras, the Spider-Man, because it has higher cognitive function, it has climbed up into the trees. It has either broken or disabled the cameras. Because again, it's Spider-Man, it can climb. Now, the Spider-Man does in fact make large webs and will lay in wait to catch its prey. And because this is a larger Spider-Man and it's not a spider that you might see in the corner of a room, because it is larger, what kind of prey do you think it's actually going to be aiming to catch? You may have guessed it, the other hybrids that were created. Because it had been shown to me that the Spider-Man had to be separated and moved to its own section of the forest, because it did at one point become apparent that the Spider-Man could, would, and did capture some of the other hybrids and eat them. So this is also why there are different regions and areas of the Appalachian Mountain where they have different buildings. Because at a certain point, it became evident that the Spider-Man needed to be separated from the other hybrids that they were working on. So now there is, for example, a building where they mostly are working on the dinosaur-human hybrids. The Spider-Man has his own building and his own team of people that are also observing it. So it's been moved to its own building. It has its own outdoor space where the only prey that it in fact may be able to catch are natural animals, but it's not in fact the hybrids that have been created. Now, just like they have created a real, actual Spider-Man, they have also created more than one Batman. This is also going to explain why in this region it has been said that some have seen a so-called Mothman, because one of the first hybrids that they created was able to escape, hence the sighting of Mothman. Because at a distance, the Batman could resemble a Mothman. So they have gotten a lot more clever when it came to the Batman, because guess what? He can fly. So in addition to there being a vibrational gate that acted as a barrier sideways, they also have had to create some sort of a barrier on top so the Batman cannot fly out or cannot get out. It's basically essentially enclosed in a cube, but it's an outdoor cube in a forest region and a forest range. Now the Batman 2.0, the one that has not been able to escape, is elusive, and true to form of bats in general, the Batman mostly hides out in caves with actual bats and is not a vigilante superhero going after the Spider-Man to right the wrongs of the Spider-Man unaliving the other hybrids. Now, because it is elusive and it mostly sticks to itself in a cave with other actual bats, this is the research department that has devoted the least amount of assets and resources to studying and developing this one particular part of the program. So kind of imagine, if you will, the Batman is like a super reclusive, introverted, emo, does not want to come out and deal with other people energy. So they have cameras in the cave, they do observe it. However, the least amount of resources have been devoted to this one particular region. Now, despite the fact that the Batman is emo and introverted and it does not want to be invited to any of your parties or any of the holiday parties that are being made at the secret government lab, the amount of space that they are actually devoting to all of these various different centers is enormous. Now, again, the Appalachian Mountain range is 1,500 miles. I'm not going to tell you that these various different laboratories are spaced out among the entirety of the Appalachian Mountain range, because it's not. It's primarily in Tennessee and in and around that area. But the amount of space that they are devoting outdoors to the various different research centers is enormous, because part of the reason that they are doing this is they want to observe the way these hybrids are, how they're able to interact and survive in the wild. So I don't know how many miles it is. It's hella big. It's way, way, way bigger than the amount of space that they are giving to animals in the zoo. Now, second to the Spider-Man, the most dangerous hybrid is the vampire-human hybrid. And here's why. And why is it only second and not first, you might be asking. So here's why. The Spider-Man hybrid is the most deadly to the other hybrids because, again, if given the opportunity, it will catch and capture and eat the other hybrids, but it's not necessarily dangerous to another man. It's the same size as a man and it has higher cognitive function. So if it was faced with the opportunity to see another man, it's not necessarily going to want to capture a man and unalive another man. It wants to unalive the other hybrids. However, the vampire-human hybrids, they are in fact the most dangerous to the researchers that are working at the facility center. So they have had to take a number of security measures to keep the personnel incredibly safe and to also keep the vampire-human hybrids incredibly well detained and segregated. So the vampire-human hybrids have their own research building and their own research center devoted strictly to them. There is no outdoor space allotted to this particular research center. Here's why. The vampire-human hybrids are the most dangerous to other men because they absolutely will attack anyone or anything and try to drink its blood. However, They are in fact very sensitive to sunlight. So if you have ever read a vampire story or seen any of the vampire movies that exist, it says that they sleep during the day and maybe they sleep even in coffins. So this part is in fact true. Not that they sleep in coffins. They want to be indoors because if they are out during the day, the sun will sap their strength. They also were shown to me as becoming tired and lethargic if they are left out during the sun, and they will bleed from their eyes and their ears if they are exposed to natural light. But it is not only natural light that they are very sensitive to. They are also kept indoors because as a whole, they're incredibly sensitive to light as a whole. So the vampire-human hybrids do not have any outdoor time. They can't stretch their legs. They are confined 24 hours out of the day because, again, if you took them out, if given the opportunity to attack a person, they absolutely would. So the only time ostensibly that they could go out would be at night. But again, they are considered to be too much of a danger to other people. So they are kept indoors 24 hours out of the day. And again, because they are so dangerous to the researchers that are in fact working in this one division, they are kept indoors, and there's a number of various different rooms that they are in, but each room is approximately the size of an airplane hangar. And in each of the airplane hangars, it's broken up into different sub-rooms within each room. Now, the rooms are all glass walls, glass ceiling, so that way they can observe the hybrids in their entirety. Now, also, because they are incredibly sensitive to light, it's not just solar light that they are sensitive to, they're sensitive to light as a whole. Therefore, the airplane hangar rooms, that the glass rooms that are housing them are in, are kept mostly dark. There is some red lights spaced equidistant all around the rooms, but there is no overhead fluorescent lighting. And if a researcher has their own desk that they're taking notes at, for example, it's the kind of light that has a lampshade on the back of it to protect the hybrid's eyes from the light. So the desk, first and foremost, they're going to, for example, be facing it. There's a very, very large lampshade on the back of it, so it's only the researcher that can actually have access to the light, and it's not going to interfere with the very, very sensitive retinas of the vampire-human hybrids. Now, what was also shown to me is it's only the top level personnel with the highest security clearance that is designated to work with these particular hybrids. Now, interestingly enough, what was also shown to me is that these hybrids are mostly fed animals. So it's not like they're unaliving the researchers that they don't like and they give them to the vampires to feast on. No. And again, because the vampire hybrids cannot go out, they're not hunting for their preferred food source, which is humans. So they are kept indoors and they are mostly given a diet of rodents, much to the vampire's chagrin, and there is absolutely no human contact that can be made between them. So there's not a researcher that's going into the room and leaving food for them. No. No humans can go into the boxes that they are contained in because the vampire hybrids have very poor impulse control, and they can and will, if given the opportunity, unalive a human for their blood. So the meals are given to them through a hole in the door to the room. So maybe if you've ever seen what a prison looks like, you've seen that if a inmate is kept in solitary confinement, there's a little hole in the door, and then the guards on the other side can slide a portion of it up, and then they slide the meal into the room that the inmate is in, and then they close it. This is not even like that. They have to take like super duper precautions to keep the staff safe. Because if it was as simple as having a hole in the door and the researcher would slide the meal in, then the vampire would grab their arm and they would bite it, or they would try to pull them in their entirety. So the door actually resembles, I don't know if you've ever been in the post office and you have a really, really large box. So you open the door on your side and then you slide the package in, and then when you close your door, then the postal worker on the other side can open their door, accessing the large box. It's kind of like that, where it's a two-step process, where the door on the researcher's side has to be closed in their entirety before the vampire on the other side can access their food. But it's not actually even a two-step process, it's a three-step process. This is wild, and at first I didn't understand why they were actually doing it this way, and I'm going to explain to you what was shown to me, and then I will explain to you why I think they do it this way. So what was shown to me is that after the researcher would open the door and put the rodent or the food into the box, they placed it on a Lazy Susan type item. Then they would close the door on their side. There's some sort of an electronic button that they would press, and then it would turn the rodent around so that it was on the side of the box closer to the vampire. Now, my vitamins used to be on this, but I realized it's perfect for demonstrative purposes, and while I don't have any real rodents, thank God, the closest I could get is this metallic little bunny that I keep with my plants. So here you go. The researcher opens the box. They put the rodent on a plate on the Lazy Susan. Then they would press the button and it would turn the plate around so that the rodent was then facing the door closer to the vampires. And then and only then could the vampire hybrid open up their door and access the plate with the food. Now, the reason that they do this is, again, because these vampire hybrids have very, very poor impulse control. So everything that they do with them is methodical, and it's designed to slow their reactivity down, especially when it comes to feeding time. And even if the rodent is not their preferred food, they're going to eat it anyway. So it's to slow down the process and slow down their reactivity time. Now, the vampire-human hybrids look mostly human except for their mouths, because it was shown to me that they do in fact have fangs. However, their eyes are red like an albino rat, and their skin is so white that it is almost translucent. Now, they are capable of speech and they experience complex human emotions. So, for example, they absolutely hate being locked up. No surprise there. And even though they know that it is for their own good and the safety of others, it doesn't stop them from hating being locked up. And it was shown to me that because they are locked up 24 hours out of the day and they do not get any opportunity to walk outside and ground their feet on the earth, some of them even experience depression. And it was shown to me that they become very lethargic because of the depression. However, the researchers have attempted to treat the hybrid's depression with, you guessed it, big pharma antidepressants. However, the vampires cannot tolerate the antidepressants because their digestive system is far too different from ours. And they cannot, in fact, digest any big pharma medication. And it was shown to me that if and when they had consumed it at any point in the past, these hybrids became violently ill and they would even vomit blood. Now, it's not only big pharma medication that these vampire hybrids cannot digest, because the researchers have actually attempted to give them a human diet to varying different degrees of success. They do not like fruits, they do not like vegetables, they can tolerate juices to some extent, they cannot eat meat. All they will try to do is extract any of the blood out of the meat. Probably no surprise there. However, interestingly enough, what was shown to me is they also cannot digest garlic. That's another anecdotal bit of information about vampires that is in fact true. However, they do not become sick if you tie a garlic garland around your neck or around your front door. That won't keep them out. They just don't like the smell of it and they cannot actually digest it. Not just garlic, also ginger. They have very, very sensitive digestive systems. Now, just like they are capable of complex human emotions, they also have higher cognitive functions and they are incredibly manipulative. So much so to the extent that they will tell any of the researchers that they are working with anything that they think that researcher wants to hear so that they can be freed, including how they will not drink that person's blood, how they will not attack that person nor unalive them for their blood, how they would in fact never hurt anyone. But again, if given the chance, they would not hesitate to drain that same human dry. Because again, they have terrible impulse control. Now, it was also shown to me that they have exceptional hearing, they also have exceptional vision, and they are stronger than a full human counterpart. However, they are not quite as strong as a full vampire. And a lot of them have an enormous amount of resentment due to the fact that they were bred specifically for the hybridization purposes and to be studied. And while in fact they are fascinating to study, it was shown to me that it takes an enormous toll on those researchers that are working with the human vampire hybrids due to the fact of the vampire hybrid's energy and resentment. So essentially, they have a bad attitude and they have a low vibe and a low energy. And in time, the researchers that are working with them are not immune to the energy that they are transmitting. So it takes an enormous toll on the researchers. However, in addition to that, it's also because they are working typically 8 to 9 hour shifts in a completely dark room. Now imagine working a regular 9 to 5 shift in the dark. And then imagine in the wintertime getting out of your job, leaving your work, and it's dark outside. So a lot of the researchers that work with the vampire hybrids are suffering from what would most be considered seasonal affect disorder, but it's not actually even restricted to one particular season. It's just due to the fact that they themselves are not getting exposure to enough sunlight. Now, in addition to one research facility that is devoted to the Spider-Man, and another one that is devoted to the Batman, and one that's devoted to the dinosaur-human hybrids and the vampire-human hybrids, they have also been experimenting with creating human-fish hybrids, also known as mermaids and mermen. Now, this is the division of this secret research center that has the most money and financial assets that have been devoted to the creation and the study of the mermaids and the mermen. And here's why. While the hybrids may have scales and fins, they also always have a human face and a human nose and a human mouth. They might have scales on their face. They have human arms that also have scales and scales on them. They do not have legs, but they have one long fin-like leg substance. But they will always, no matter how many times they try to change the formula on the hybrid, these hybrids will always have a mostly human face with a nose and a mouth. And these hybrids do not live very long because they need to spend most of their time in the water. So you might be wondering then, well, okay, why can't they submerge the lower portion of their body in the water and keep the upper portion of their body out of the water? And the scientists have actually experimented with it by creating different like rock type substances that these hybrids can hoist themselves out of the water to sit upon and only keep the lower portion of their body in the water and keep their face out of the water. They still don't live long. Here's why. They need to be fully immersed in water for approximately 80% of the time because the oxygen levels in their blood need to remain constant. And the only way to keep the oxygen in their blood constant is when they are submerged in water and that they can absorb water through their fins. So they need to be submerged in water roughly 80% of the time. So how's that going to work if they have a human nose and a human mouth? So they tried also experimenting where they would give them a breathing apparatus so they can stay submerged in the water and they can breathe through their nose and their mouth. However, because they also have human skin, when the human skin is in the water for 80% of the time, it was causing a degradation and a breakdown of the human tissue that was exposed to the water. So no matter how many times they have tried to work the formulation differently, give them breathing apparatuses, allow them to stay out of the water part of the time, these hybrids simply do not live a long period of time. And they are still working on trying to create the formulation, and that's why this division has the most financial assets that have been devoted to it, as well as the largest research facility and the largest amount of researchers that are also on staff with it. Now, there is one last research center that was also shown to me, and this is one where they are working on some sort of a RoboCop super soldier Terminator hybrid. And the wrongness of it and the energetic wrongness of it, I do not even have words for. It's just a dark, dense, heavy energy, and there is no other word that I can assign meaning to other than wrong. It just feels wrong. The energy of it feels wrong, and to see what these hybrids look like also is incredibly wrong. Because what was shown to me is, it is literally looks like a half human, half cyborg. So imagine it's some sort of a robot shaped humanoid, and then they are putting an overlay of skin on top of it. But it's not human because it's mostly cyborg with skin placed on top of the cyborg. So it doesn't have human processing and it doesn't have human emotions. Now that's exactly the reason that they have been working on it and attempting to create it, because they are attempting to create some sort of a human super soldier that does not have human emotions. Now the reason that they're creating it without any level of human emotions is because they want it to be a super soldier, super killing machine. But herein lies the problem, because it's really just a cyborg with human skin overlaid on top of it, or some sort of a synthetic material that resembles skin, because they're not skinning people to actually use the skin like it's a fur coat or a human coat. So it has some sort of a human skin synthetic overlay that's placed on top of it. So herein, in fact, lies the problem, because it's a cyborg, so it has to be programmed, but that also means that it has to be programmed to know when to stop actually unaliving, because it doesn't have human processing. It doesn't, in fact, even have a brain. It's a cyborg. So what would be in the portion of the head is a motherboard, like a computer. So it needs to, in fact, be programmed when to unalive and when to stop unaliving. But it doesn't have human processing, so it doesn't know when to stop unaliving. And the programming is so sensitive and so delicate, they haven't actually, in fact, been able to master it. Because it's not sentient, and it cannot think, and it cannot feel, which again is part of the reason in why it was in fact created, but that's also one of the downfalls of it. It's not sentient, and it doesn't have human processing and human functioning. That's why these don't work very well. And what was also shown to me is that artificial intelligence does not, in fact, make these human cyborg Terminator super soldier killing machines function any better. So one could say that ChatGPT on your phone is in fact more savvy than these hybrids are. So while they have been programmed to unalive, they cannot discern when to stop or when not to unalive. So look at these like they have a switch, an on and an off button. Unalive, stop unaliving. But again, they cannot discern who or what to unalive, so they're mostly ineffective. And in case you're like me and you're wondering, well, why don't they have a human cyborg hybrid like LeBron James? I looked into that as well. And they do, in fact, have another division where they are working on them. And these models look completely human. They have sentience, they have higher cognitive function. They also have super strength, super speed, super vision. They can see absolutely perfectly in the dark. They have perfect hearing. And because they have super strength, they can just as easily unalive a man with their bare hands as they can a bear, a moose, a dragon, or even a dinosaur. These models are currently being tested to use as CIA field agents, and they do make excellent field agents because they have higher cognitive function as well as super strength, super speed, and a host of other supers that were added to them. And because they also have some sort of a cyborg functionality to them as well, they can learn incredibly complex things in a short period of time. Like, for example, flying a helicopter. So if you yourself ever saw the movie The Matrix and you saw the scene where Neo had Kung Fu uploaded to his own internal processing system, and he learned Kung Fu in like a couple of minutes time, it's in fact the same thing here, because they can download, because again, they have some sort of a cyborg function, they can connect to the web and they can download the manual on anything. So if they ever encounter a gun that they don't know how to use, guess what? They can learn how to use it. They can learn how to ride a motorcycle. They can learn how to disable bombs. They are incredibly versatile and useful, and they also are sentient and have higher cognitive function, which you would think would make them ideal. However, because they are mostly human and they only have some sort of a cyborg upgrade that was made to them, they are completely fallible. So they are not an ideal, perfect, unaliving machine because they do have complex emotions. They are incredibly intelligent, but they also have a human body. So that means they can't really be put out into active war zones because their human body is not infallible and they can be unalived. So this is going to conclude the various different hybrids that were shown to me. Now again, as we're wrapping up the video, I'm going to remind you why this is specifically the case and why it is occurring in the Appalachian Mountain region. Now that is because of the influence of the ley lines that are present in the Appalachian Mountain range. So the energy of the ley lines, it is what is making the creation of these various different hybrids possible, because it has been shown to me when I have looked into other regions around the United States, there is another research center in the Nevada desert where they're housing a great number of various different extraterrestrials. However, the delicate hybridization process and the creation of these various different animal and human hybrids is most easily attainable in the Appalachian Mountain region because, again, ley lines and their influence. And as I always say, energy is everything, and that is certainly the case here as well. Now, this is going to conclude my wild and insightful video into the Appalachian Mountain Range. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video or perhaps found it to be insightful or thought-provoking. I'm always going to remind you to please take what resonates and to leave the rest behind. And this is your reminder, till next time, to stay in the high vibration.